Hello and welcome everyone. We are joined by a very, very special guest today. We are joined by Mr. Jay Mukhey. He is the Global CSR Director at Finastra. Rang is Finastra's CSR partner, and we've been working together with Finastra for a few years now. And Jay is going to talk to us about some of the CSR initiatives at Finastra globally, and also talk to us about what their plans are in India, and also about this particular partnership and what value does he see partnering with partnering with Rang. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Sure. So just to give you a little bit of an introduction to Finastra. Finastra is a global fintech company. So we make software for banks and other financial institutions to help run their businesses and their operations. We have a very sort of progressive culture. We believe in this world of open. So we believe the future of finance is open, and we believe that every single person has a right to have affordable access to financial services, and also financial literacy, which is why we're such a strong supporter of Rang there. Within the company, our core values are, we call it collaborate to innovate. So we have a big focus on how we enable collaboration across our different functions and teams. So we've got, as you would imagine, a technology company to have resource and research and development teams, R&D teams. We also have obviously sales, marketing, all our go-to-market activities, our services organization, CSR and ESG departments, people team, or human resources, finance, etc. So we're always thinking about how we can come together, understand the challenges both inside the company and outside the company, and create innovative solutions to try and solve for them. So collaborate to innovate, it's a big one, and that's really seeped through to our CSR strategy. So our CSR strategy was launched when the company Finastra was launched, which happened in June 2017, when Misys and D&H, the two legacy companies that formed Finastra, were brought together through a merger to create Finastra. And we started with this CSR strategy with three main focus areas. The first is financial inclusion, where we firmly believe in providing access to financial literacy, affordable access to financial services, and how do we get small businesses to get funding and capital. The second is what we call social innovation, and that is where we invest in youth, particularly social mobility, so disadvantaged young people. We do this through things like the Hour of Code, where our R&D teams teach kids around the world the basics of computer science. We also partner with social mobility charities. And we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda. We're a very diverse company. We're a multinational company with offices all over the world. And people from all different backgrounds work with us. But we wanted that reflected in the technology that we build, because we know that has a huge role to play in society. And then tech for good. So we have things like hackathons where we hack against systemic inequality and other things like that, which is obviously very, very appealing to our staff. But we have around 4,000 external participants every year who join our hackathons. And then the last is our environment mission. So our environment mission is how do we become a carbon neutral business by 2030? How do we create a sustainability agenda both inside and outside the company? And then how do we reduce the carbon footprint of the financial services sector? And just to tie it all back to your original question, we know that we can't do this on our own. Right? So there are things that Finastra has in terms of resources and funding, etc., that we can allocate to these things. But we know for change to happen and transformation to happen, we need to collaborate with our external partners like Rang and various other charities, NGOs, and partners across the globe. So very brief summary of the company and the CSR strategy, but hopefully you can see our focal points.
If we could go to some of these specifics, give us some examples of global CSR project, and if you could also narrate the stories of success that you have witnessed in the past.
Yeah, sure. So we launched the CSR strategy. We realized very quickly that where we have a unique role to play is within financial inclusion. So we see technology as an enabler for alleviating things like poverty and hunger through the provision of financial services and allowing people to lead better lives. It could be somebody getting their first mortgage and buying their first home, right? Or getting their first loan and starting their first business, or getting a loan and going to university, right? And educating themselves, or being the first person in the family to do that. So we see the technology as an enabler for the capital to go to the places where it can really affect change. So financial inclusion has always been our focal point. And as we started to work with our partners around the world, we noticed some very consistent themes, right? So the whole financial system sort of collapses when defaults occur on lending, right? So we started looking at why defaults happen. And the consistent theme that I referenced earlier is really around education. Right? So when people understand financial services and systems, they are much less likely to default on a loan because they know how it impacts them in the future in terms of their ability to borrow and secure capital. And then we looked even further and we said, this is not taught in schools, right? So how do we expect the adults who are, playing in the economy, trying to make their way in life, how do we expect them to make the best decisions for themselves, their families, their businesses, if they haven't had this as part of their formal education? So we started with teaching kids around in schools around the world about the basics of finance and money and the economy. So what is money? Why does money exist? What are the things that you can do with it? Spend it, save it, invest it, donate it, for example. And this has been incredibly well received by the schools that we partner with. And we partner with hundreds of schools around the globe to deliver this type of learning. And then we looked at it, at the level that Rang there operates, right? Which is, you told us that, you have a default rate of less than 1% on your platform, which is incredible if you think about the demographic in which you play, right? You're providing first-time loans a lot of the time to people, but you provide it with the education. And as a result, you see that reduction in default rates. You go to a rural part of underserved America, so Arkansas, Mississippi, where Finastra has customers who operate, and it's the same problem. You got high default rates. You got the prevalence of predatory lending practices, and payday loans, and pawn shops that operate in those communities, who are incredibly successful, right? And it's because their offerings are marketed very well, and they are in the best locations in the town. And a lot of the time, the place where you get a better loan or a more sustainable loan is, that entity, because they're not making as much money, can't, spend money on marketing, can't get in front of the customer they're trying to help. So we partner with a lot of the banks in America, in Europe, and we started looking at this problem. And the banks that had the lowest default rates, even in communities where there was, mass amounts of poverty, were doing the same things that Rang are doing in India, which is providing the education up front. And if it's a business borrowing the money, providing coaching once the capital is received to invest that money wisely and make it a viable business. Right. So, and we see the macroeconomic benefits of that. You see that through the improvement in communities. You see that through job creation in those communities. You see that in increased tax revenues in those communities that are then spent locally and invested in things like infrastructure and tidying up the streets, which then attracts tourism. And then you get this whole multiplier effect happening. And it's just wonderful to see the regeneration and transformation of these communities when financial services is done in a sustainable and conscientious way, as opposed to just a way to profit from the people in those communities. Another example is in Kenya. We looked at some of the issues there. You've got wonderful innovations like M-Pesa, which is digitized payments, right, and made it possible through mobile networks like Safaricom. But then you've got things like Fuliza, right? And Feliza is sort of the lending platform, the micro lending platform on the back of M-Pesa. And they're charging very, very high interest rates to people who are in desperate need of short-term loans. And they're even integrating it into things like betting applications, right? So young people are being encouraged to gamble and giving loans to invest in gambling via the same platform that's enabling them to make peer-to-peer payments, right? And this is a social issue. This is a big social issue. So what we in Kenya, we're working on our Trust Machine initiative, and I can talk to you a little bit about what that is and how that comes together to help to create the effect that we want. But there's so many different pieces to this puzzle, Dola, that it's not an easy one to solve. But we feel through partnership and collaboration with our customers, our banking customers in particular, and our partners like Rang, we can solve a lot of these things.
I was just coming to the Trust Machine in Kenya. If you could just take us through that a little bit, give us a glimpse into the whole project and how it's operating.
Yeah, so the Trust Machine was a CSR initiative that started about 1.5 years ago within Finastra. And it brings together all these elements that I spoke about previously. So Finastra is really playing the role of an ecosystem orchestrator in this. So we are bringing together the different entities that on their own are not impactful, but together can create this transformation that we all want to see. Right, so we partner with a platform called Greenpoint Financial, or Greenpoint Global in New York. They have an education platform called Tomorrow's Genius, or TG. And we have commissioned them to create the most modern, the most exciting financial literacy content in the world today. If you look at the way financial literacy is delivered today, it is usually in PDF form, huge long documents. All the really important information is buried in between, buried in large documents. So we gave ourselves a challenge of taking all of that information, putting it into a medium that people like to consume information today, such as video and voice recordings, making it really interactive, making it very gamified, making sure that the presenters who are delivering the content are resonate with the end user. And we're doing this in various languages. So we've already started developing in English and Spanish because we're piloting in the US market and also in Swahili for the Kenya market. And we've had discussions with Rang there about working with you and leveraging some of your content to do the same in Hindi. That really all starts there with financial education. And then what we've done with Greenpoint as well is integrate a certification program. So once you've received the literacy course, you get tested to make sure that you've understood that content. You get a certificate, and you can take that certificate to a Finastra customer and say, look, I know what the weighted average cost of capital is. I know how much debt I should have in my business. I understand my financial accounting, and this is how much money I can afford to allocate to a payment on a loan based on my forecast, right? So we're really just equipping people for those, especially business owners, for those conversations with banks to increase the approval rates on loans and to make sure that they get the best price on the loan and that it's an affordable loan for them, right? They're not putting themselves into a situation that they can't deliver against. So that's the first point of the Trust Machine, is financial literacy certifications and then the referral to the bank. The second thing we've done is we partnered with the University of Leeds in the UK to create a synthetic data set. And synthetic data is really, really important for the success of the Trust Machine, because a lot of the time, the people that we're trying to help, they don't have a financial history. They don't have a credit score. But what the synthetic data allows us to do is say, Dola, a female entrepreneur, wants to start a new business in this particular sector. This sector is thriving. Now, Dola doesn't have a financial history and Dola doesn't have a credit score, but somebody in Dola's situation who has the same kind of business and the same aspirations and the same team and talent would be able to afford a loan of this size. And what it's doing is giving the bank an opportunity to provide capital to somebody who is able and willing to pay a loan, but just hasn't done the right things in their lifetime to get through the system, through the actual algorithm that is calculating the score. So that's the synthetic data piece. The third step is what we call loan optimization. So Finastra has a solution called Fusion Optimum, and we've partnered with the university in Switzerland, in Zurich, called ETH. And they are working with us on building the algorithms to price loans based on the individual's ability to, or that business's ability to pay the loan. So what it does, it takes live data. So it could be weather data, it could be government policy data on coronavirus, it could be whatever the live data source is, and it applies it to the parameters of the loan calculation. So if I'm in the agricultural industry and I'm a farmer in Kenya, and I know that the rains are going to be very, very generous, and I'm able to create 2 harvests this year as opposed to typically 1 in past years, that means my cash flow is going to be more, and I can actually afford to take a bigger loan, invest in better machinery, more people to meet that demand when the rainy season comes. Now, this is types of innovations that aren't available today in financial services. So it's really giving people the opportunity to do more or less, because it works the other way as well, right? So if you're a retail business in a pandemic and you can't open your business, you shouldn't really be taking a loan, right? Because you're not going to be having income. So it works both ways, but what it does is it gives the bank a much more comfortable position on the risk side of the loan and the risk of default on the loan and the affordability of the loan, and therefore what the loan should be priced at. So for the consumer, they're getting the price based on their situation and their macroeconomic and microeconomic situation around their business. And for the bank, it's giving them the comfort that they're getting, less likelihood of a default. And that is really the only reason why they would not lend. Right? So that's the third piece. The fourth piece is Finastra has created a data platform called Fusion Ledger that supports the trust machine and essentially works like blockchain. So when a person takes a financial literacy course on the trust machine, it will create a block to say Dola has completed this. When they take the certification, pass the certification, another block is added to Dola's trust machine data trail, audit trail, to say she's got the certification now and it's on your profile. The next step, you've opened up a corporate account at a Finastra customer running the trust machine. Third step. Fourth step, you get a loan funded to that corporate account. Fifth block. Sixth block, you get you make a payment against that loan. And so what that Fusion Ledger is doing is basically creating a data set that doesn't exist today, especially in developing nations like Kenya, for a lot of people. So it's it's incredibly exciting to have the synthetic data set to give banks the sort of a risk profile on that person, even though they don't have a financial history, and then concurrently have actual data that is then supporting that synthetic data, and one day will replace that synthetic data, because obviously actual data is much better than synthetic. The fifth bit is the connectivity to a lending platform. So as you know, around there, you have to have loan origination, you have to have all your compliance, you have to have your underwriting on a loan. So Finastra has a number of solutions that we deliver to customers in lending that enable all those things, and that connects to what we call FusionCrab.cloud, which is our platform for open innovation within financial services, that can therefore access all of these different components. And then the last piece is business coaching. So depending on the country, we've got different partners who are providing business coaching, and even Finastra employees are volunteering their time through Trust Machine, or that's the intention, to provide coaching to businesses, right? So I've secured this capital, don't go and invest in that advertising on that billboard. That's not going to give you more revenue. Invest in QuickBooks. That will, give you a much better way of doing your accounting, and alleviate a lot of the time you spend on bookkeeping, and that will free you up to do X, Y, and Z. Right? That's a good investment. buy this combine harvester that doesn't till the land, right? Invest in regenerative farming techniques. You'll get a much better crop. You'll get much happier ecosystems. The animals will be happier. You will have, on your farm, et cetera, et cetera. So, depending on where the business operates, we'll give them a coach. And again, we see that as a huge benefit, not only to the small business and its growth and its ability to create jobs, but also to sort of lower that default rate, because obviously, the way you invest capital is probably the most important thing once it's received, right? In terms of scaling the business. That's
absolutely mind-boggling and quite holistic approach. Incredible. Now coming back to India, which are of course you spoke about financial inclusion, but which are the other areas that Finastra is focusing on in terms of CSR activities in India?
So India is it's a fascinating country. It's a huge population, very diverse in culture. It celebrates all religions and faiths and all the special days that those religions mark. And it's an incredibly, in many ways, incredibly progressive culture. The community, the population is very young, highly educated, very, very good in English speaking as well. So they can, you see these BPO centers launch in India, business process outsourcing, I should say, to serve global companies, because, like I said, the education level, the quality of English is so high. But then there are some challenges, right, that you and I are both aware of, right, in India. The big one is equality between men and women in particular. I'm Indian of origin myself. I've grown up in this culture, and I see the role of women and I see the role of men, and some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. But when we for example support a charity called Educate Girls in India, they are tasked. They have a mission to identify every out-of-school girl and get them back into school and retained in school. And that is not an easy conversation to have with a family that don't send their female child to school because they're worried that she might get abducted or attacked or sexually abused, right? And these are very taboo issues in India. Other reasons, they could be looking after their sibling or their grandparent or working in the business sometimes, right, while their brothers go to school. And so to have, to Educate Girls, we just love their approach. They're very sort of community orientated, and they go into communities and, have conversations with families and explain why it's so important for their female child to be educated as well as their male child. So, equality is definitely one thing, and that works internally at Finastra as well. We have a big focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, even things like LGBTQ rights in India, there's progression happening, but, there's still so much work to be done for people to feel safe and comfortable and included in society. The other area, I think, which is very relevant to Finastra, is our environment mission. Right? So India, just because of the size of it and the sort of the not just the population but the economy, it's a big contribution to the problem that we're facing together as a people around climate change. So we have planted, I think in India, we have planted more than 10,000 trees through Finastra Environment's mission. We're also looking at investments in renewable energy, so wind farms in India and solar farms. But we don't just do it. We don't just plant a tree to plant a tree. Right? I mean, it's great that our employees go out there, they get their hands in the dirt, and they realize what it takes to get a sapling and for it to grow into a tree which can then sequester carbon. But for example, in Trivandrum, which is in Kerala, we created a park with oxy bamboo trees for children with autism and other types of and other disabilities to go and enjoy, right? So it sequesters carbon, it offsets Finastra's carbon emissions that we create through our operations. So that's great, ticks that box, but it also is created this wonderful space away from all the noise, away from all the pollution in this community, where children can just go and enjoy. There's an outdoor library, there's, you know, a swing set and slides. So, you know, families really, really enjoy these places that we create. And we've done this in collaboration with another charity partner called Helping Hands. They're actually a charity focused on helping children with autism. We wanted to not just, like I say, plant a tree to plant a tree. We want to use these opportunities and these collaborations to do something purposeful and meaningful. I call it planting trees with purpose. We're doing similar things in Bangalore with Say Trees, our partner there, and in Pune as well. So I think, you know, all that put together, you know, the financial inclusion initiatives that we run with yourselves and a farm and other partners, social equality initiatives, and everything we do around the environment. You know, we've got a very sort of holistic approach in India, and also a very impactful one, and something that our employees, so we've got between 2,500 and 3,000 employees in India, they're very much focused on CSR initiatives and very engaged in those, which is, you know, delightful to see as a global director for the strategy, that we're making so much impact in the country and beyond.
Now coming to the partnerships, right? The partnerships like the one with Rang, what are some of those criteria that you look for when choosing a partner, and what are some of those non-negotiables when you look to partner with somebody?
Yeah, it's a great question, a question I get asked very often, right? And I think, I mean, it's important to start with an understanding of why corporates invest in CSR, right, or environment, social governance, ESG. You know, corporate philanthropy is the bottom of the pyramid. If you think about how companies create societal value, the majority of companies play in this corporate philanthropy space, right? So that's the base of the pyramid, where they take money out the bottom line, out profits, and allocate it to charities. And typically they choose those charities based on their missions and their own, or sometimes it's the board of directors' favorite charity or something like that, right? You take it up one notch and you've got corporate social responsibility, and that's where you have things like volunteer hours and you have corporate matching. And then you have these focus areas like we have at Finastra, and programs that you run within those pillars that create impact. And then the top of the pyramid is where very few companies play, and that's where you create shared value. And just through your natural operations, your business as usual practices, you're creating value in society and you know, benefits for the planet. And that's where Finastra is heading towards. I'm really proud to say that we're, you know, moving towards that space, and a lot of that is down to the partners that we've chosen to work with, and which leads to an answer for your question, which is the criteria that we have. So we, you know, as Mises and D&H, the legacy companies, we were in that corporate philanthropy space. We just allocated money to charities. We didn't really care what they did with it. We didn't hold them to account. We didn't say, you know, if you do this, then you can receive this further funding or whatever else. We didn't do any of that. But when I started this strategy in the business, you know, I changed that. That was the first thing I changed. I said, there are things that Finastra can do, right, through, you know, our resources. So that's our people, the talent our people have, the technology that we build, and obviously all our resources in terms of our physical resources, our offices, etc. And then there's the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is the biggest proponent towards transformation that we have. That's undisputed, and I've realized that, you know, more strongly every single year we've been running this program within the company, and it really starts with that defining that criteria. So what is it that Finastra can do? So in the trust machine, right, for example, we use that example. Finastra has great fusion lending optimization capabilities through Fusion Optimum. We've got the people who can make that solution and deploy it, right? We've got a platform that we've built that connects everything together, right? Another great thing. We've got the data set through Fusion Ledger that we've built. But is Finastra a world-class educator? No, we're not. right? So we go and find a partner who can go and fill that gap for us. Is Finastra got academic research to create synthetic data models? No, we don't. So we go and partner with a university like we've done with the University of Leeds, right? So really the criteria for getting a philanthropic grant from Finastra is if you can solve a problem that we can't, or you can solve it faster, right? Or better, right? And so, to talk about Rang there, we wanted, the same way with Educate Girls, we gave them a grant to get more girls into school, because we know the more girls in school, that's going to just benefit the Indian economy. It's going to make the workforce stronger, more diverse. And as those girls grow up and, receive that education, at some point, they're going to enter into careers, and that could potentially be a career at Finastra, right? Which is only going to benefit us and the wider ecosystem. So that's why we do that. And they are the specialists in that. We're not. If I ask my employees to go knock on the doors of families' houses that don't send their female child to school and convince the father to send their daughter, when that outcome is not going to be great. But someone who's experienced in having those conversations, is a member of that community, understands the local challenges, understands the local mindset, is going to be much more effective, right? So us allocating a grant to Educate Girls to go and do that is exactly the reasons why we would pursue that kind of approach. Rang, they're the same, right? We wanted to deliver financial literacy at scale in India. We wanted to enable micro entrepreneurs to start new businesses, and particularly women. Right now, Finastra, we could have designed that content, right? Deployed it ourselves. We could have built that social lending platform ourselves. We've got the capabilities. But Rang there's been operating since 2008. You've got a great track record of doing this, right? So instead of us investing and doing it ourselves, find the partner that's doing it already, doing it the best out of everyone in the business, and give them the money to go and do what we want, right? Because ultimately it's just about getting that job done, right? Because we know how beneficial it can be to the community, the country, and the world at large, right? So that really is the criteria that I set. And we hold all our philanthropic partners to account, right? We say, what are you going to do with the money? Let's agree up front. This is our expectations, and you will only get the next year's funding if you meet this criteria as evaluated by someone who's independent, right? I'm very glad to say that we've been overly impressed with Rang there, and what you've been able to do with the resources we provided you.
Thank you so much. I will convey that to the entire team. It means a lot to us. In fact, I was just you already answered part of my question. What value do you see in this partnership, and what is the, expectation upfront going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, look, like you said, I've spoken a little bit about why we've invested with Rang there upfront. But your starting point is probably 3 or 4 years ahead of where Finastra would be if we were to do it ourselves, right? So in terms of R&D, in terms of marketing, in terms of go-to-market, you've already done all the things that we would do if we were to do it ourselves. And that has given us a fantastic foundation to build on. My question now is, what's next, right? What can we do together next that's going to create that next level of transformation, right? So you've already got this financial literacy component built. You've got these booths, you've got voice over IP financial literacy courses, you've got microloans, you've got low default rates, you've got lots of people thriving off the capital you're enabling through your platform. So, when I have conversations with Smita, your CEO and founder, my conversation is, what more can we do now? What's the next step? And here's what we're thinking about as Finastra. So, we know that over the next 10 years, there's going to be 1 billion new jobs needed to support the growing work population. Currently, economies are being set up to create 400 million new jobs. So there's going to be a shortage of 600 million jobs globally. And a lot of that is in the emerging world, right? In the developing world. So what can we do to address that? Because if we don't do anything, we're going to have mass unemployment, we're going to have social unrest, you're going to have high levels of crime, you're going to have an overburdened tax system. There's going to be so many repercussions if we don't start addressing that now. So as I mentioned, the trust machine, the whole point of it is to get capital to small businesses so businesses can create jobs. And we know that 92% of net new jobs in the emerging world are created by small businesses. So my challenge to Rang and Smita was, how do we leverage Rang's platform and Rang's credibility now in the market to go and not just lend to the individual and the micro business, but to lend to the SME, right? The business that needs $500,000 to go and create 100,000 jobs, right? In India, for example. I very much see Rang there being part of the trust machine process. So you've got the national banks in India, they can borrow from the central bank, but how do they reach those small businesses and communities? And I fundamentally believe that the platform that you have has the capability to enable that flow to those businesses that, with the right education and the right coaching, can solve local challenges, create jobs, pay taxes, and bring parts of India that are underserved today and make them thriving, which is what we all want to see.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Just coming to my last question about the impending crisis that we are all faced with. What do you think partners like us can do along with corporates like Finastra at this point in time to help communities, especially in India?
Yeah, so it's a really challenging time, like you say. COVID has really changed the way the world works, has brought the future forward in many ways. Whenever something bad happens, I always try and look for the good thing, and vice versa. Whenever something good happens, I always think, what is the downside? Now, with COVID, obviously the priority is getting everyone safe and well, right? And fortunately, the world has come together to create vaccines, to get PPE to where it's needed most, to get testing capabilities, to upgrade and invest in medical and pharmaceutical facilities, to do the best that we can in the response to this unprecedented pandemic. But it's not enough. I mean, we can see currently now the situation in India. It has overwhelmed the country, overwhelmed the capabilities in terms of, and we're seeing the devastation and the tragedy that's caused, not just in India, but all across the world. But, especially today, there is no country experiencing higher cases, higher death rates associated to COVID. So I think, like I said, the most important thing is getting everyone safe and well through these interventions that we've created. And then the second thing is, once we're past this, and I know that we will get past this, humanity is very resilient, and we will find a way past this. And when we come out on the other side, it's, how do we take the lessons learned from this pandemic forward and create a better society for everybody? Right? And I think there's for me, there's three areas. Right? The first is invest in medical research to make sure that we're prepared for the next virus or pandemic situation. And that's not my area of expertise. If Finastra were to go and try and do something there, we would go and find the partner that we could invest in that would help do that. I think that's the first thing, right? That we have got a wake-up call to say that, this is how quickly the world can shut down, right? If we're not prepared. And I always say, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Right? So I think, but that's not my area of expertise. I leave that to the medical community, and trust that they will do the right things. The second thing is, financial services. You've seen the shift, and not just even financial services, but the wider economy. The whole world has adapted to working remotely, and that has so many different spillovers, right? So, for myself, I've been working from home for the past year. There's times where I'm more productive, less productive, but ultimately, we're still doing great things in CSR, even though we can't go into the communities firsthand, right, and affect the change that we were doing in the past. And so, the way we work, I think, is very different. also, I think, the importance of being able to continue despite something as significant as the pandemic. Things like digital payments, cashless payments. Viruses can be transmitted on the transfer of cash, physical cash. So digital payments, digital loans, accessing information digitally, all of these things, like I said, has brought the future forward. And we've, companies have basically thought up new ways to carry on their business as usual, but in a very, very different way. And then the third area is the environment, right? We just celebrated Earth Day at Finastra on the 22nd of April. We had a couple of weeks of celebrations for it. One of the points I made is we can fight for a fair and just world. We can fight for equality. We can fight for, the alleviation of poverty and all those things that are very, very warranted. But what is the point if the world is uninhabitable by humans within 100 or 200 years, right? I was so impressed to see, like in northern India, with the pandemic and the reduction of pollution because of less air travel, less road traffic, the smog has cleared, and they can see the Himalayas for the first time in I don't know how many hundreds of years, right? So people have been born into that community and never realized that beyond that pollution was the most beautiful, breathtaking natural gift to that community that they never even knew about, right? And so, we can operate an economy without polluting it. We can create energy without digging the land and mining fossil fuels and burning it and putting the carbon into the air. We can sustain our hunger and our thirst with regenerative farming practices that don't destroy the topsoil around the earth and the biodiversity that the earth has. We can fish sustainably without destroying the oceans and its ecosystems, through industrial fishing practices. So we've learned all these things, and we've seen the benefits in just this 1 year, right? In terms of the reduction of the impact to the climate. So I think, that for me is the most important thing, right? That, we fight for all these things that we were speaking about earlier, right? And we never stop campaigning for and innovating to those objectives, but always mindful of the gift that we've got, which is the greatest gift, which is the planet, right? Because the planet sustains everything, and if we don't look after it, everyone says we're killing the planet. We're not killing the planet. The planet will be completely fine once we've made it uninhabitable for ourselves. We're killing ourselves, essentially. That's what we're doing through these practices, right? So until we stop doing, because like I said, the earth will carry on spinning long after we're gone, just like it did with the dinosaurs. And it will recover and restore itself. But we just won't be here because we have pursued profit at all costs and made the world uninhabitable. So for me, those three things are opportunities to improve, opportunities to reflect, and opportunities to be better, especially as we think about conserving the planet.
Absolutely. Jay, thank you so much for your time and, of course, the valuable insights. And we look forward to an interesting and enriching journey going forward with Finastra in India as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dola. Thank you for having me. And like I said, we're a big fan of Rang there at Finastra.
We're really humbled by that.
Yeah, you don't need to be, the biggest company in the world to make the impact. You just need the right voice and the right standing to take your idea and globalize it. And that's exactly what Finastra is trying to do with Rang there. We see the value you created in the few years that you've been operational, and we want to take that same thinking, that same vision, and scale it across the world to help people in India and outside.
Absolutely. Thank you. See you, Jay.
My pleasure. Bye, Dala.